Hello and welcome back. This episode is part of a series recorded for Travel Market Life Live on September the 4th at the Rembrandt Hotel, where I gathered a number of hoteliers together and experts in the industry to discuss 5 pertinent issues that we are dealing with. In this episode, we look at performance for 2024. Was it as expected? And how can we deal with the fallout?
Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
So welcome to Travel Market Life Live, the hospitality discussions here at the Rembrandt in September 2024. We're going to be exploring 2024 performance, expectations versus reality. Where do the challenges lie? First, going to be joined by Jane Pendlebury, the Chief Executive of HOSPA. Then Catt McLeod, the Director of Elegant Hotel Collection, followed by JonnySiberry, the Group Revenue Manager at Sarova Hotels. As we explore the ways in which the year is developing based on forecasts, how room rates, ADR, occupancy and revenue have performed, and the expectation of business development over the next couple of years. So first up, Jane, the Chief Exec of HOSPA. Thanks ever so much for joining me. So how is the year currently developing from your perspective and speaking to your members?
It's been very hit and miss, yeah. One week, everything seems to be going fantastically. And then the next week, they're forecasting next to nothing for the following month. It's been, I think, probably one of the hardest years to predict. I think, look, I'm getting lots of nods. That's always very reassuring. There are certain areas there. I think meetings and events have really taken off, or perhaps hoteliers got more savvy to the value of meetings and events. And I think that has grown and has been more stable in its growth as well. But bedroom-wise, I think it's been very hit and miss. Probably overall at this stage, depending on whether you're city-based or rural or large hotel, small hotel, you're probably more or less where you should be at this stage. But it hasn't been a calm, easy ride at all.
You couldn't say the same that for the last few years. And obviously, as a membership organisation, you're there to represent and support your hoteliers. And every year you seem to be dealing with something really quite different. Where do you see the key growth areas in 2024 and how hoteliers have been addressing those challenges?
The key growth, I think, definitely is in meetings and events. I think the challenges have been more around the rising costs. I mean, it's almost getting dull to say it, but it's a reality, a massive reality across the board. And it's not just food, it's not just utilities, it's staff, it's absolutely everything. The rising costs, which are making everything that much harder, and the squeeze on consumer spending. Everybody knows that we're in this period of people not wanting to spend so much. And although I think you mentioned earlier about the West Country, the spend overall from the traveller might be increased, but actually the food and beverage outlets aren't seeing that at all. The spend is probably going on to accommodation and other costs and not benefiting the peripheral spend.
And what about the wider sort of like booking trends, the way that travellers are sort of engaging with accommodation now? There's been a big rise in the service department, the Airbnb sector, but then some of that seems to be massively saturated. I've been speaking to quite a number of B&B operators, and what they're haven't seen the level of bookings, particularly this year, as what we've had in previous year. Are we seeing the tide change a little bit?
Service departments certainly have been reaping a lot of success recently, and I think that was maybe driven a lot by COVID. And it was much safer, wasn't it, to stay in your own apartment than it was to stay in a hotel, even if they were open. So I think the service departments are doing very well. And I think they have become possibly a little bit more flexible with their approach as well. There was a time where if you weren't staying 28 days, you didn't even think about a service department, whereas now they have opened their eyes to that. As for Airbnb, it's not my area of expertise particularly, and I just tend to avoid them.
Okay, well, obviously you've got to support the hoteliers. That's what you're here for. Now, you've got your HOSPA event coming up. What are some of the key themes that you're going to be exploring there, and why are these particularly pertinent?
We are doing, as we always do, a full review of 2024 and maybe a little bit of 23 and looking forward into 2025. And we've got our regular economist coming to talk as well. And then we'll be covering our regular themes of people. We are always talking about attracting and retaining staff. This one is particularly about inclusivity this year. We're covering technology, cybersecurity, terrorism, finance, we're doing revenue management and moving on to profitability and what leads into profitability. And then we're ending the day this year with our leaders panel. Historically, we've opened with our leaders panel. We're actually, due to just the scheduling and people who could, when they could turn up, we're closing the day. So that's hotel owners, CEOs, managing directors, just having a chat about what keeps them awake at night.
I mean, as we approach towards the end of the year, it's always a way to get some of the ducks in order for the following year. We sort of, at the beginning of 2024, there was a lot of talk that there was a lot more bookings being made for 2025. Do you have any indication as to what next year might have in store for the industry?
One would like to think it's going to continue to grow. A lot of stats at the moment are saying we are back at sort of 2019 levels, more or less. I think some attitudes have changed. Some people will spend more than they ever did. Some people will spend less. And business travel, that was predicted to almost disappear, wasn't it, with the introduction of all the Teams and Zooms and all the different things that we use. It'd be interesting to hear from everyone here today, but I'm not sure that business travel has decreased that much. It has changed its face, but it's still definitely a thing going on. You just have to try and book a room in London at the last minute midweek, and it's pretty expensive.
Now, I mean, you mentioned cost just now, and I think I did actually hear last week that the energy companies have announced that there's going to be further rises coming up this year. Have you looked into that and what the impact will be for hoteliers?
Well, certainly, if you look over the last couple of years, when they first hiked up, the hike was just unbelievable. It was, more than double the price. And they have come down significantly. We started this year at still much, much higher than they had been a couple of years prior, but they had reduced a little bit compared with the previous year. I think they may be stabilizing in that there will be those increases, but we've already experienced a lot of those increases and put things in place to prevent them affecting the business too much on a day-to-day basis by signing longer-term contracts, things like that.
Now, as we look at this whole 2024 performance, expectations versus reality, anything further that you'd like to add to give people food for thought?
One of the things I think is driving a lot of hoteliers at the moment is personalization. It's been talked about for ages, but I think the reality of personalization is really kicking in now, and people are expecting it. And if they don't get it, they're disappointed. Most people are willing to share their information to enable personalization. And if they're not, then they just don't want it. So I think that's fine as well. I think that could be something that sort of separates the wheat from the chaff as such and drives people forward, where they are able to make each guest feel independent and independently valued.
Okay, so we're going to be setting our hoteliers a series of questions, and just need to make sure that we've definitely got personalization on that list then as we dive into the conversation momentarily. Joining me now is Catt McLeod, who is from the Elegant Hotel Collection, as we have a closer look at perhaps a different area of the industry, particularly in and around independent hotel market. Now, it's a market that you particularly work closely with. How is the independent hotel market performing at the moment? What are you seeing this year?
Well, we're privileged to represent 24 luxury independent properties across the UK and be part of the broader HotelRes family, which has over 500 properties. So we get to see a huge variety of data and information and trends. And we're seeing a very strong performance in the luxury market and a much more increased diversity of business now. We had a huge luxury leisure bounce back post 2020. For many of our members now, that has continued to be strong through the holidays, through the summer, and even midweek now, even in locations like Liverpool, for example, where, you're getting both that leisure high rate and that corporate high rate, whereas perhaps some of these northern cities wouldn't have typically been such strong leisure destinations, with the exception of York. And we're seeing very, very strong production in York, in Edinburgh, but Glasgow now is also seeing that leisure business. So a much greater spread of business, both in corporate and in leisure.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I've spoken to a few independent, especially family-run hotels, and especially those who perhaps worked mostly in the business sector, where that dropped off massively as people looked not just towards the bleisure, blended travel, but also just a change in the way that people were doing business post-pandemic. And so they've had to really look at how they can capture that leisure business. So there's have to be a lot of rethink, hasn't there, at hotels as to how they get a slice of that pie.
Through the pandemic, there was a lot of chatter about direct bookings were now leading and driving more business than the OTAs. Of course, the OTAs were sleeping bears in 2020, in 2021 even. As soon as the OTAs started pumping money back into all of their marketing, they became those channels again. So the hotels that are really succeeding in driving that direct business, particularly that direct leisure business, are the ones that have a really clear direct booking strategy and a really clear, long-reaching, you want to be planning 18 months, 2 years with your direct booking strategy so that you can capture those direct guests. What we're also seeing is much more advanced planning from the corporate market. So the corporate RFP process now, so that request for proposals that corporates and travel management companies put out for their corporate travel programs for 2025, this week has been bonkers, that everybody is back to school. Everybody is absolutely looking at their business for 2025. And these are the corporates, these are the bookers. So the hotels that are switched on to gaining that business and the hotels that are working well with their partners are the ones that are going to be able to book that business, to plan for that business for 2025. But they have to have that 18-month to 2-year plan, because the rates that are being contracted now, yes, we are seeing some RFPs that are accepting flexible rates, but the rates that are being contracted now as part of the RFP process, those are the rates you're going to be offering your guests in December next year. You're going to be negotiating on those, and that's going to affect 2026. So it's really important to have that plan right now.
I was reading an article just, I think it was yesterday, about the fact that the branded market is particularly strong at the moment, and it's really impacting the independent market. What are the challenges that you see, and other than making sure that you're well planned and well thought out for independent hotels, and how can they make sure that they, retain that share of the market?
So different channels have different opportunities and threats. I'm in many ways Ms. GDS and can speak to that with regard to how independent properties can compete in that area. Working with a partner that has chain-wide agreements. So for example, if we look at the big chains, the Hiltons, the Accors, the Marriott, they have chain-wide agreements with the travel management companies, from American Express GBT to Carlson Wagonlit, FCM, which we're seeing huge growth from the Americas market with FCM as that travel management company really pushes and drives into that market. It's really important that independent hotels are working with a partner that can promote them on a level playing field with the chains to those markets. HotelRes has many very long-standing preferred partnerships with the travel management companies. And through 2020, we saw Daniel and the demand sales team at HotelRes keep in touch with the human beings within those travel management companies and consortia, so that now, as we enter the 2025 program, we are seeing chain-wide agreements with corporate clients like KPMG and Marks & Spencer's, and chain-wide agreements with those travel management companies and consortia. And that really puts an independent hotel on a level playing field with the Marriotts, the Accors. And it's quite a unique and exciting opportunity. But of course, it's only part of the picture, and it has to be part of that diverse, well-planned distribution mix for the hotel.
Excellent. Kat, thank you very much. Well, we're going to hear from a hotelier now, and that is JonnySiberry, the Group Revenue Manager at Sarova Hotels. Now, Johnny, we've been having conversations pretty much throughout the entirety of this year, where at the beginning of the year, as we sort of delved on a monthly basis into what was happening in the market, you didn't know what was going on. It seems like you were being hit from all sides. Your forecasts had planned one thing, and the market was behaving very differently. That was at the earlier part of the year. How has it progressed then through the summer now as we enter into the autumn?
Yeah, I still haven't got a clue what's going on. So nothing's changed really. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, the last couple of years has been a challenge, and a couple of people have said already, this morning that predicting and forecasting and setting budgets and rates for, 12 months out is just very difficult. It's really a finger in the air exercise a lot of the times. Travel patterns have changed so much. Lead times have changed. Demographics and behavior of the passengers have changed. So it's kind of difficult to get a real tight grasp on. Pre-pandemic, you could pretty much predict what was going to happen year after year after year. And it was all very samey. It was very normal. It was very boring. It was very, static. But since the pandemic, everyone's just completely changed their mentality. They're not, I think, planning as far out and as deliberately as they used to do. They're leaving everything a lot more to the last minute. I don't think it's because of safety concerns or the reasons we had a couple of years ago. I think it's people who just realized that they can do things more on the fly, on the hoof, and plan a trip even to the other side of the world within a week or 10 days, and you can book it and do it and go, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not something that requires 6 months of planning. And so they're adopting this strategy, and so it makes it difficult for us.
I mean, in the UK, the weather's been blamed for not getting the bookings and the cancellations. We just saw that data there about the increased interest and demand for non-refundable rates. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that?
I've said for years, and a lot of people never believe me, but I think they're coming around to my philosophy. Weather has a massive impact on booking volumes. And we've seen it when the sun's out and the weather's hot and people are, running around their gardens at home or whatever, and they think, oh, chill, this weather's fabulous. Wouldn't it be great to get away? Just have a weekend break somewhere. And we see big volumes of bookings coming in. And so I'm a big believer in that. In terms of non-refundables and flexible pricing, if the discount is convincing enough on a non-refundable, people are way back to where they used to be and prepared to put the money up front and take the chance on potentially losing it if their plans change for whatever reason. At Sarova, I'm going to be careful to not give away too much private information, only anything that's public, but you can work this out for yourself, so it's public information. We offer quite a generous discount for advance purchase. Because of that, we get ballpark 75 to 80% of our transient business is on advance purchase, non-refundable. And of course, if someone's plans change for urgent reasons, we'll discuss it with them, but generally it's non-refundable, and that's the terms, and that's the way it is.
Now, in regards to investment in the hotel, you've just implemented a whole new payment system, and have you got any other plans for upgrading your infrastructure and technology digitalization?
Yeah, we're actually still in the middle of implementing that payment system here. It was supposed to happen last week, which is partly why we kind of booked all this in for this week, and this week was meant to be clear. Last week it didn't work out. We had to reschedule everything. So we're installing new card processing and payment systems here. Once that's done and signed off and completed, then we roll it out across the other hotels. But we're only doing one property at a time because it's quite a big liability if it goes wrong, which it did last week. So we're just doing one at a time, rolling that out. Following on from that, one of the things that's at the back of our mind but is slowly working its way to the forefront is PMS. Within the next couple of years, we've decided that we're going to have a plan in place to replace it. We're on the Opera V5 at the moment on premise and self-hosted. We believe
the cloud could be coming.
Well, who knows? Thing is, you can't go from Opera V5 to Opera Cloud. There is no plug and play or upgrade option. It's a brand new install of a brand new PMS. So if you're going to go to that length, you may as well look at other options or other suppliers as well. If it was as simple as download all your bookings onto a floppy disk or whatever, USB, and upload them into Opera Cloud, that'd be great, but you can't do that. So it's a start from scratch. So, Opera Cloud is just as much chance as any other vendor.
Excellent.
At the moment. Yeah, not looking forward to it though.
No, it's a big operation, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a few people in this room that has been through that journey that you can get some learnings from today. So, Johnny, thanks ever so much for that insight. We're going to have much more good conversation now as I open this to the floor as hoteliers in the room are going to discuss the revenue and the performance of 2024. Okay, so following that discussion, David Ohanyanyan from HOSPA Hotel, you've been facilitating the conversation at your table. What have been some of the key points that have come out from that?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a struggle to converse. We all had a lot of information, a lot of stuff to share, really interesting stats as well, and kind of similar opinions, really. I think coming out of 2023, people were a lot more optimistic, but we had a mix of expectations for 24. So some with a more flatter trajectory as played out, some expecting to boost due to a stronger 2023. So a bit of a mix in that. We found that performance was kind of flat, but for instance, with some properties, it would be ADR that went up that drove revenue performance, and a bit of a mix of booking windows. Some found them to be standard, some to be a lot shorter and more last minute. We found also that it's similar kind of patterns have been seen across individual properties, independent properties, smaller properties and groups. So there's not really been, in the discussion here anyway, that there hasn't really been much variance in that either. And also lead times, there's been a bit of a mix. Some across multiple properties found not really to change too much. Others have found them to be a lot shorter or last minute bookings as well. And some of our properties were also driven highly by events. So for instance, with Manchester, it was mentioned that new venues opening, concerts, but also football events, which are key to that city, are very hard to predict because, for instance, I think it was in January, one year there was one football match and another year there was 6, and that made a huge difference. So overall, a mix. To summarize, I would say it's largely flat in terms of the performance. Some expected better, some kind of guesstimated that would be the case. And then they're expecting in 2025, hopefully a bit more of a boost based on that flat performance.
And there is a noticeable impact of weather here in the UK?
Well, the weather was quite a discussion here, and especially for sort of coastal locations as well. And also the pricing. People have been used to, since post-COVID, visiting UK destinations. They've taken a bit of an increase, especially the luxury sector and key places like the Cotswolds or lakes. Weather has been a massive influence, especially for people with last-minute bookings. If the weather, say, in Brighton was good, then if there was 15 rooms left in sort of Wednesday, Thursday time, then they would be sapped up immediately. But if weather was bad, then they'd probably be 15 rooms. And similar, it was found in the Travel Zoo as well, that certain properties that they would never be seeing in July and August, such as Devon and Cornwall, were suddenly giving them inventory to sell. So yeah, very, very influential in the UK and very much talking point for all of us Brits.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Over to Johnny now. So how was the conversation leading in your direction in your table?
Very similar feelings actually to David's table. 2023, I think the consensus was a strong year. Don't want to talk ourselves out of a job. For us revenue managers, wasn't really a struggle, didn't have a lot to do. The business kind of flowed in, but that was, I think, a global feeling, and people were just, getting back to traveling because they could, open and freely. Certainly rates and occupancy grew very nicely in 2023, but we sort of reached a plateau where we couldn't really push rates any further. So any increase in revenue was going to come through occupancy. So 2024 has been a bit more of a push. We've got to be a bit more strategic, use our skills a lot more to grow that occupancy. Certainly the luxury end of the market has found it much more difficult, I think, to maintain rate and demand and occupancy. A little further down the scale, the 4 and 3 star markets have fared a bit better. 2024 occupancy has grown a few percent, rates about static, maybe, rounding error up or down 0.5% here and there. But yeah, that's sort of what we've seen for 2024. 2025, I think we'll just see what happens when we get there. Who knows? All bets are off, really.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And then over to Catt McLeod, who was looking after our third table here. What were some of the key points that you noticed were coming out?
So 2024 certainly presented some challenges compared to 2023, with budgets being much harder to set. So the expectation was perhaps that ADR was going to continue to be as strong as it was in 2023. However, ADR for the city properties was more of a challenge. However, for the luxury leisure side, we saw that occupancy was perhaps sacrificed for maintaining that ADR, which enabled the properties to continue to deliver that really high level of experience to the luxury guests. And we had a very interesting conversation on the importance of staffing.
We got Gregor Ritchie, the Managing Director at Optimum Hotel and Leisure Management. So what was your contribution there?
The question about how can we prepare for the next year and what do we learn? My only observation is based on all the previous years that you've got to employ good quality GMs and management teams that understand not just about the ethics and the values of managing a good team, but the technical expertise to assess trends, because I think sometimes these expectations are far too high, because hoteliers, being hoteliers, don't look at things properly, I think. And I'm a hotelier of some 40 odd years or so. And I think sometimes we need to look outside our industry to find trends and the way in which businesses are assessed. I always want to try and innovate the way we look at things. We don't always get it right, but we try. And I think my last point in this is always about don't employ idiots. If you think they're an idiot, don't take them on, because you'll just spend time chasing your own tail.
Can I just dive into that innovative part? How do you try to be innovative? What's the ways that you try to get that thinking to be different amongst your team?
We have quite an open forum with our GMs and management teams. And so I encourage a kind of consultative approach to management. It's not dictatorial. We use our brains, and that's difficult for a lot of people. I get that. But actually, if you just apply logic and energy, you can come up with lots of different ideas. And it's not just about living in hope, because I think sometimes budget expectations are hopeful. They're not realistic. They're not logical. They don't come from a good place. I think if you want to grow a business, then if you said to me, Gregor, in 5 years' time, how would you like your business to be viewed and perceived? You'd want growth. You'd want an anchor there with quality and standards, but you'd want the culture to grow as well and develop. So if you wrap all those things up into one, and it's not easy, but if you get a management team that can do that, then the ideas will flow, the initiatives will flow, the innovation will flow, and engaging with the customer at the end of the day is what we need, because we need them to come back. As much as I love Hotel Res and Elegant Collection, I don't want to keep paying their fees all the time, but I would rather get direct business. So no, it's about embracing the people around you and trying to get the most out of that team performance. The psychology is so important now, because we talked earlier about how, people are being gazumped in the employment market. You offer somebody. I took a GM on April this year. By May, he'd been offered another job at his old hotel, and I had to put my salary back up again to retain him. And I was happy to do that, because I think he'll be a bit of a superstar. But that whole aspect of just retain your management team if they're good, because if you lose them, you get your whole strategy set back months, if not years.
Thank you very much, Gregor. Now, we are definitely going to be exploring much more about staffing and leadership in one of our other podcasts, so do check that out when it comes out. Another points there, Kat?
So in terms of looking to improve business for next year, we also saw interesting developments within innovation and sustainability, where some hoteliers are being much more open to employing staff from outside of the industry in technical areas. And as we talked about IT, for example, when we're competing for performance marketing, digital advertising, and those real technical CRM staff and IT staff that we're not just competing with in hospitality, being open to employ people from outside of the industry in those roles, rather than saying must have 5 years experience in hospitality when you see that on the job for a digital marketing manager. So I think that's a great area for development, particularly with innovation and sustainability.
Thanks for joining us for this first episode as part of Travel Market Life Live that was recorded on September the 4th, a series of hospitality discussions with hoteliers and experts. In the next episode, we're looking at revenue and how to improve profit across the business with a special focus on F&B. Remember, you can subscribe to Travel Market Life on our website, travelmarket.life, or follow us on LinkedIn, where we post all our latest episodes, articles, and insights. Thanks again for listening.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music Sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.